As you have seen in the last video in this series, the layers and strata are laid down together, directly related, and do not require vast amounts of time to form. In fact, in this video, you will see proof that the layers and strata could not have formed over vast amounts of time. And this is proof of the Noachian flood, and that secular geology is fallacious. Now, what evidence do we have that secular geologists have known this for quite some time? Well, we can know it if for no other reason than in 1930 the United States government established Waterways Experiment Station in Vicksburg, Mississippi, commonly known as WES. WES is the world's foremost hydrology lab and also a top-secret military technology research facility. So secret is this facility, in fact, that virtually no photographs of its modern structures can be found anywhere on the internet. I was lucky to find this one. It was rumored during the 1960s and 70s that because of the top-secret military technology housed at this facility, that had nuclear war broken out between the United States and the Soviet Union, that this facility would have been in the top 10 nuclear strike spots for the Soviet Union, because the technology housed there would allow the citizens of the United States to get a jump start on technology again after a devastating nuclear war. I've been to the grounds of this facility quite a few times myself. However, visitors are highly restricted. WES is the most highly funded and most thorough hydrology experimentation laboratory in the world. For 70 years, they have conducted every imaginable sort of hydrology experiment, on large scale and small. It is not rational to believe that the experiments at Waterways Experiment Station alone, much less those conducted by other geologists elsewhere, have not proven that strata and layers are directly related and that they are laid down together, and that it does not take vast amounts of time for them to form. Even so, secular geologists have denied in decades past that the layers themselves actually existed, and claimed that the Earth was only covered with strata. This has begun to change. However, they still claim that the layers and strata form over vast amounts of time, which is scientifically disproven. In fact, the secular scientific community automatically filters any evidence that supports creation or the Noachian flood, regardless of what field of science it may be from. If it's evidence for the flood, or evidence for creation, or evidence of some kind that discredits evolutionism, it will automatically be filtered, the general public will not hear of it, and it will never be printed in a school textbook. Vast amounts of acquired knowledge have been omitted in this way by secular scientists. Let's now examine just a few more evidences that the strata and layers of the Earth were not laid down over vast amounts of time, but instead were laid down during a cataclysmic flood. First, it's important to know that the Earth is covered with an average of over 1/2 mile of sedimentary material. Such a depth of sedimentary material cannot be created by innumerable local floods. It is not possible. Not even 1 trillion local floods could produce sedimentary layers and strata to a depth of over 1/2 mile across the entire face of the Earth. Only a global flood could produce this. The boundaries between the strata of the Earth are typically highly defined. In some cases they are not and seem to merge. However, in many cases they are highly defined and clearly visible. Wherever they are defined, which is very common, they are highly defined and very easily distinguished between each other. Had these strata and layers been laid down over vast amounts of time, the boundaries between them could not be smooth. They would all be highly irregular. From one end to the other, there would be no regularity to them whatsoever, because of the action of water and rain, outpouring of water from rock, small and larger local floods. These boundaries could not be smooth. They would all be irregular everywhere across the entire Earth. But they are not. It is most common for these boundaries to be flat and smooth, as though one placed a piece of board upon another. Only global inundation could create this, only a singular flood. Had these layers been laid down by vast amounts of time, the boundaries between them would be exceedingly irregular all across the Earth and at all depths. To believe otherwise would be to believe that the Earth has no geologic processes occurring at all. One would have to do away with rain and wind and small and great local floods to believe that the boundaries of the strata could be so smooth against one another as though a board were placed upon another board. What you see here is a stark example of how defined the boundaries can be between the strata. These are strata of various sedimentary materials laid down together by the flood of Noah. Let's go back for a moment to the hydrology experiment that I showed you before. Pay careful attention as you watch it. As you watch it, you will see the strata being laid down, with the layers being laid down to the right. As the strata are being laid down, the layers grow with it horizontally. This is how the stratification of the Earth happened. During the flood of Noah, all of the layers and the strata were created together rapidly. This process could not occur over great lengths of time. As you watch, notice that the layers are being laid down to the right as the strata are being laid down. The sedimentary material continues to grow from left to right. This is critically important. As you can clearly see, the layers are being laid down at the right and continue to grow as the strata are being formed. The strata and layers of the Earth could not have formed over vast amounts of time. And this is the general nature of the stratification of the Earth, regardless of where you look at it, regardless of what layers you look at what depth they are, or where on the Earth they are found. This is the general condition of the majority of strata in the Earth. The boundaries are either well-defined or highly defined, and just as with the hydrology experiment you witnessed, the strata and layers were laid down rapidly by rapidly moving water and sedimentary material. They were not formed over vast amounts of time, as evolutionists claim. What you're looking at here is the side of a mountain. Notice the treetops in the bottom of the photograph. The mountain has highly defined strata boundaries. But what's most interesting here are the many boulders of considerable size that have been trapped in this sedimentary material. They've even been lifted up and stacked higher and higher and higher as the strata continued to build. Only rapidly moving water and sedimentary material could throw boulders around and trap them in sedimentary material in this manner. Had these layers and strata been created over vast amounts of time, as evolutionists would have you believe, these boulders would not exist in this mountain. As further proof that the sedimentary layers were laid down rapidly, we see these numerous strata. The red circles indicate areas which prove that these strata were bent as they were still soft and moist. They were not hard before they were bent. Thus they were soft sedimentary material laid down rapidly together. These layers could not have been formed over vast amounts of time. As if that weren't enough, a large percentage of the mountains of the Earth and all of the ranges of the Earth are folded mountains. Folded mountains are sedimentary strata which were compressed because the continents were sliding across the crust of the Earth during the flood of Noah. They could only be folded if the material was still plastic at the time. The evolutionists would have you believe that these strata are millions of years apart in age, as their radiometric dating processes would indicate. This is false. They were created during the flood of Noah. Stay tuned for part 3 of this lesson for evolutionists.